The night on Veralia was darker than usual. The frozen winds screaming across the white desert like hungry wolves. Ethan sat inside his small wooden cabin, the only warm place for miles. The heater humming softly as snow slapped against the windows. Outside, the temperature could kill a man in minutes. Inside, the air smelled of burning wood and faint machine oil. He liked nights like these, quiet and alone. Far from the politics of the human colony and even farther from the wars in the stars. He was sipping a mug of steaming tea when it happened. A faint sound almost too soft to hear over the storm. At first, he thought it was just the wind pressing against the door, but then there it was again scratching. Weak but desperate, Ethan's brow furrowed. He set his cup down and walked slowly to the entrance. The scratching turned into a faint thud, like something or someone was leaning against the door. His hand hesitated on the latch, instincts warning him to be careful. The last time someone came uninvited in the middle of a Verelian winter, it ended with trouble. Still, something inside him told him to open it. The wind hit him like a wall when he cracked the door open, cold slicing through his clothes. And then he saw her. She stood there, or rather, she was trying to, her body swaying, her knees buckling. Her skin was pale, almost silver in the moonlight. Tiny crystals of frost clinging to her hair. Her eyes, strange and bright, locked on him for a moment before she collapsed forward. Ethan caught her just in time, feeling how cold she was, colder than any human should be. She was light, fragile in his arms. Yet her features were unlike anything he'd seen before, not exactly human, but close enough to make his heart beat faster. Without thinking, he pulled her inside. Closing the door against the raging wind, he placed her gently on the couch, near Kit. Near the heater, wrapping her in a thick blanket. Her breathing was shallow, her lips slightly blue. Ethan rushed to the kitchen, poured hot water into a cup, and returned. She opened her eyes just a fraction as he held it to her mouth. Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling. "Please, don't throw me out." The words made him freeze. There was fear in her tone, deep and heavy, as if being outside was worse than death. "I'm not throwing you out," Ethan said, his voice steady. Though his mind was racing, he wanted to ask her who she was, why she was here. But he saw her shivering hands and decided questions could wait. She tried to sit up, but winced, clutching the blanket tighter. "I can cook," she said weakly, her eyes darting to the small stove in the corner. "I can clean, help you. I can give you children if you want. Just don't send me away." Ethan blinked, unsure he'd heard right. Give him children. Who even said something like that on first meeting? He didn't know whether to laugh or feel alarmed. "I think you need to rest," he replied, trying to keep his tone calm. Her gaze searched his face, as if looking for some hidden answer. Then, slowly, she nodded and pulled the blanket over her head. For a moment, the only sound in the cabin was the storm outside. Ethan sat back, still staring at her. She didn't seem dangerous, not in the way the colony officials would define danger. But there was something she wasn't telling him. Her clothes were thin, not suited for this weather. Her boots were worn out, the soles almost torn through. The only thing she carried was a small pouch tied to her waist. He thought about checking it, but decided against it for now. The wind howled louder, making the cabin walls groan. Ethan moved to the window and peered out through the swirling snow. He thought he saw a faint light far away. It flickered, moved, and then vanished. A ship, maybe? Or a patrol drone? His gut told him it was connected to the woman now asleep on his couch. He turned back to look at her. She had curled into a ball. Clutching the blanket tightly, her breathing was slow, and even now, but her face was tense even in sleep. He wondered, what kind of life made someone speak like she did when she first came in? Who was she running from? Ethan took a deep breath, sat down at his workbench, and tried to distract himself by fixing a broken scanner. But his mind kept returning to her words. I can cook. I can give you children. No ordinary traveler would say that, not unless. They were desperate, and she had been desperate, more than desperate. The storm outside showed no signs of stopping. Whatever was happening, he knew one thing. This was only the beginning. The storm had not stopped all night, the wind beating the cabin like an angry fist. Ethan sat in his chair half asleep, watching the fire slowly die in the heater. This strange woman had not moved much since he wrapped her in the blanket. Her breathing steady now, but her body still trembling from the cold. He told himself she would leave as soon as the storm cleared, that she was just another lost traveler, yet deep down, he knew she was something else entirely. By morning, the snow outside was piled high against the windows. The sky, a dull gray. Ethan poured himself another cup of tea and glanced toward the couch. She was awake, sitting up, her eyes scanning the room as if trying to memorize every detail. When their gazes met, she pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "You kept me alive," she said softly, her voice still weak but calmer now. "You didn't have to," Ethan shrugged. "It's not my habit to let people freeze on my doorstep." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. She glanced at the small stove in the corner, her eyes lighting up. "Do you have food?" "I can cook," she said, her tone almost urgent. Ethan hesitated. "There's some dried meat, root vegetables, maybe a pack of protein strips." "Show me," she replied, already trying to stand. Her legs wobbled, and Ethan stepped forward. To help her, she flinched at his touch, not in fear, exactly. But as if she wasn't used to being close to anyone, he guided her to the kitchen space, where she opened his small storage locker and pulled out ingredients with surprising efficiency. Within minutes, the air was filled with a rich, unfamiliar aroma. She used spices from the small pouch tied to her waist, mixing them with his supplies. In a way he had never seen, Ethan watched in silence, curious. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" he asked. She didn't look at him, her hands busy slicing and stirring. "From my mother," she said simply, before they took her away. The way she said it was sharp, final. And Ethan knew better than to push for details. They sat at the small table and ate, the flavors strange but warm. Ethan had not tasted food this good since leaving Earth. As he chewed, he noticed her watching him carefully. Not like someone enjoying company, but like someone studying him. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan replied. "It's quieter this way." Her eyes softened for a second. "Quiet is good." "But dangerous," he frowned. "Dangerous?" She didn't answer, only returned to her food when they finished. She began cleaning the dishes without being asked. Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching her. "You said something last night," he said slowly, "about giving me children, about not throwing you out." Her hands paused in the soapy water. "I said what I had to say to survive," she replied without looking at him. "But it's true," she added after a moment. "If you keep me here, I can do more than just cook." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He stood and walked to the window, peering through the frost. Something caught his eyes, a faint shimmer in the air, almost like heat waves. It was gone before he could focus on it. "You're running from someone," he said, turning to face her. She froze, then slowly nodded. "They won't stop until they find me," she whispered. "If they do, you will be in danger too." The words settled heavily between them. Ethan crossed his arms. "You're going to have to explain sooner or later." Her silver eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw Ferrand something else trust. "Maybe. I can't tell you everything," she said. "But I can tell you this: what I carry could change everything for humans and my people." She touched the pouch at her waist, holding it protectively. "If they find me, they will kill me and anyone who helps me." Ethan's instincts screamed to throw her out, to keep his quiet life. But another part of him, The part that had seen too many injustices during the war kept him rooted in place before he could answer. A sharp sound echoed outside. Not the wind, not the snow shifting. A mechanical hum. Faint but growing, her eyes widened. They're here. She moved to the window, her breath fogging the glass through the swirling snow. Dark shapes move, 3 small hovercrafts, their lights cutting through the storm. Ethan swore under his breath. Patrols don't come this far out. They do if they're hunting someone. She replied, pulling the blanket tighter like. Armor. Ethan moved to the door, checking the locking bolts. Do you have a weapon? She asked suddenly. He gave her a sharp look. Why? Planning to fight them. Only if I have to, she said, her voice steady. Something about the way she said it made him believe she wasn't bluffing. The hum outside grew louder. Ethan's mind raced. He didn't know who she was or why she was here. But one thing was clear. If the patrol found her, his quiet life on Veralia was over. And maybe, just maybe, that was already decided the moment he opened his door. The hum outside grew into a low roar, vibrating through the wooden walls of the cabin. Ethan moved to the corner where his old rifle hung on the wall. It wasn't a military-grade weapon, but it was enough to make a patrol think twice. He loaded. A fresh cell into it, the familiar click echoing in the small space. The woman stood by the window, her eyes following the shifting lights outside. They're sweeping in a spiral. She said quietly, they will reach us in minutes. Her voice was calm, but her grip on the blanket betrayed her tension. Ethan joined her, peering through the frost-coated glass. 3 hovercrafts floated above the snow, their searchlights slicing through the storm. The beams moved slowly, methodically, as if the pilots already knew exactly where to look. Ethan's stomach tightened. You've dealt with them before, he said, keeping his tone low. She didn't take her eyes off the patrols. Too many times, her fingers brushed the pouch at her waist, a habit he was starting to notice. Whatever was inside meant enough to risk crossing a frozen wasteland. The first hovercraft passed within 50 meters of the cabin. The searchlights swept across the wall, lighting up the window. For a moment, Ethan froze, holding his breath. The woman stepped back into the shadows, her silver eyes glinting in the dim light. The beam moved on, but Ethan knew it wouldn't be long before they doubled back. We need to move you somewhere they can't see, he said. She nodded without hesitation. Where? Ethan pointed to the trapdoor beneath the small rug in the corner. Old crawl space, he explained. It's not much, but it's hidden from scanners. He pulled the rug aside, opened the hatch, and the smell of cold metal and dust rose. Up! She climbed down silently, moving like someone used to hiding. Ethan closed the hatch, replaced the rug, and returned to the window. The patrols circled closer. One of them hovered low, sending out a cone of blue light that shimmered against the snow. Ethan recognized it. Bioscan technology. If that beam touched the cabin, they'd detect her presence instantly. He gripped the rifle tighter, considering his options. The hovercraft stopped directly in front of his door. 2 figures stepped out, their heavy armor shining under the searchlights. They moved with military precision, boots crunching in the snow. One knocked sharply on the door, the sound cutting through the silence. Open up, citizen, a voice called out. Muffled by the storm, we're searching for a fugitive. We need to check your premises. Ethan opened the door just a crack, cold air rushing in. What kind of fugitive? He asked, feigning confusion. A female of non-human origin, the soldier said, his visor reflecting the cabin light. She's dangerous, maybe carrying stolen materials. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Haven't seen anyone out here, except the snow. The second soldier glanced past him into the cabin. Mind if we take a look inside? He asked, though his tone suggested it wasn't really a request. Ethan stepped aside, masking his nerves. The soldiers entered, scanning the room with their helmets' HUD displays. One of them walked to the kitchen, opening cabinets and checking. Corners the other moved toward the couch. Kicking at the blanket still warm from her earlier use, Ethan fought to keep his expression neutral. "Cold out, isn't it?" he said casually. Neither soldier answered. The one near the couch paused, tilting his head as if hearing something. For a split second, Ethan was sure they'd found her. Then a gust of wind rattled the walls, and the soldier turned away. Nothing. "Here," he said into his cum. The other soldier gave Ethan a long, unreadable look. "If you see anything unusual," he said, "report it immediately." Ethan nodded. Of course. They left without another word, the hovercraft lifting into the storm and disappearing toward the horizon. Ethan closed the door quickly, locking it. He waited a full minute before pulling back the rug and opening the hatch. The woman climbed out, her breathing controlled but faster than before. "You lied for me," she said simply. Ethan shrugged. "Didn't feel like giving you up for the first time." She looked directly at him without fear in her eyes. "Most humans wouldn't risk that," she said, almost like she was testing him. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at the pouch she kept so close. "Whatever's in there," he said. "It's the reason they're willing to fly into this storm to find you." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It's the reason I can never go back." The fire in the heater popped, filling the silence between them. Outside, the storm howled again, but this time Ethan could swear he heard another sound beneath. A distant metallic hum, deeper than the patrols before. She noticed it too, her eyes narrowing. "They'll keep coming," she said, "and next time, they won't knock." The sound outside faded, leaving only the steady crackle of the heater and the slow beat of Ethan's own heart. The woman sat on the couch, still wrapped in the blanket, but she no longer shivered from the cold. Her eyes were sharp now, alert, as if she had decided something during those tense moments in the crawlspace. Ethan leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "You said I deserve to know more," he began. "So tell me, who are you, really?" She looked away, her gaze fixed on the frost gathering along the edge of the window. For a long time she didn't answer. Then, slowly, she spoke. "My name." "Doesn't matter," she said. "If you spoke it out loud, it would be recorded somewhere, and they'd know you helped me." "That's not an answer," Ethan replied, his voice calm but firm. Her silver eyes met his again, a faint light glinting in them. "Fine," she said. "I am not from this planet, or from any human world." Ethan didn't flinch, though his mind raced. "I figured as much," he said. "Your skin, your eyes. You're not exactly blending in." She gave a ghost of a smile. "I wasn't trying to." Her fingers touched the pouch at her waist again. "My people call ourselves the Alley. We live far beyond the borders humans mark on their star maps." Ethan searched his memory. He'd heard the name once, in an old classified report during his time as an engineer for the colonial fleet. The Alley were rumored to be dangerous, but no one had ever proven they even existed. "What does the human patrol want with you?" Ethan asked. Her smile faded, replaced by a cold, distant look. "They don't want me," she said. "They want this." She opened the pouch, just enough for him to see a small crystal shard. Glowing faintly from within, the light pulsed like a heartbeat, shifting colors from blue to violet. Ethan leaned closer, curiosity overcoming caution. "What is it?" "Proof," she said simply. "Proof of what your people have been doing to mine." Her voice carried no anger, only a deep sadness. "They came to our world with promises of trade, peace, and shared technology," she continued. "At first, we believed them, we welcomed them. But then, people began disappearing, mostly women, young and healthy." Ethan's gut tightened. "You're saying humans abducted your people?" "Yes," she said, "for breeding experiments, for mixing our genes with yours. For making something new, something they could control. Ethan's mind flashed back to her first words the night she arrived. "I can give you children," she had said. He had thought it was desperation, maybe madness. Now, it sounded like truth. He sat down across from her, his voice low. "You escaped," she nodded. "Barely. They kept me in a sterile white room. Always watched, always tested," she said, her hands tightening into fists under the blanket. "One night, a sympathetic worker slipped me a map of the facility and told me where the crystal was stored. She said if I could take it and get to the neutral zone, my people might finally have proof." Ethan stared at the shard, the faint glow reflecting in his eyes. "You risked crossing half the planet during winter for this. I risked my life," she said. "And now, because I came here, you're risking yours." Silence filled the room, heavy and unbroken. Until the fire popped in the heater, Ethan stood, pacing slowly. "You came to me for a reason," he said. "Why me?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because you're on their list." Ethan stopped mid-step. "What list?" "The list of humans who don't agree with what's being done," she said. "I stole it from their system before I escaped. Your name was on it, along with a few others." He exhaled slowly, understanding more than he wanted to. If she had come to him, it meant she believed he might help, or at least not hand her over. "You're asking me to get involved in something? That could get me killed," he said. She met his gaze without flinching. "Yes," she said simply, "but it could save thousands of lives. Maybe more." Ethan walked to the window, brushing away frost with the back of his hand. The storm outside had calmed slightly, but the snow still fell thick and fast. In the distance, he thought he saw movement, again dark shapes against the white horizon. He turned back to her. "If I help you, there's no going back," he warned. "There's no going back for me either," she replied. Ethan's thoughts raced about the quiet life he had built here, about the danger this would bring, about the people she claimed needed saving. He had left the fleet years ago to avoid getting caught in someone else's war. But now, war had come to his doorstep. The heater's flame flickered low, casting long shadows across the room. In those shadows, Ethan made a decision, though he didn't say it out loud yet. He walked over, sat down across from her again, and said, "Tell me everything you know about getting to the neutral zone." Her eyes widened, then softened. "You're helping me?" She asked. "Not yet," he said, "but I need to know what I'd be walking into." She leaned forward, lowering her voice as if the walls might listen. "It won't be easy," she said. "They have checkpoints, scanners, drones, and someone on the inside feeding them my movements." Her hand rested on the crystal again. "But if we can get this to the Allery Council, everything changes." Ethan didn't reply, but inside, he knew the choice had already been made. Whether he wanted it or not, her fight was now his too. The moment Ethan heard the deep hum again, he knew they didn't have much time. It was louder now, heavier, not like the light patrol crafts from before. This was something bigger, something built for hunting. The woman Illyrio's from the couch, her hand already on the pouch at her waist. "They've found the trail," she said quietly. "They won't stop until they have me." Ethan crossed the room and pulled a weatherproof coat from the hook. "If we're leaving, we leave now," he said. She gave a sharp nod, no hesitation, outside. The snow was falling in thick sheets, the wind pushing against the cabin walls, as if trying to keep them inside, but the hum was growing. Vibrating through the ground, they couldn't wait. Ethan opened the back hatch of the cabin, the one that led to the storage shed and the old service path beyond. A blast of cold air rushed in, biting at their faces. The Allery pulled the blanket tighter around her before throwing it aside, revealing a slim fitted coat made of some alien fabric that shimmered faintly. "It resists cold better than human materials," she explained, slipping it on with practiced ease. Ethan grabbed a small pack of supplies, food rations, a spare, energy cell for his rifle, a compact thermal lamp, and slung it over his shoulder. They stepped into the blizzard, their boots sinking deep into the snow. The shed was only a few meters away, but already the storm blurred its shape. Ethan led the way, his head down, the rifle strapped across his back. When they reached the shed, he shoved the door open and pulled her inside, against the far wall. Sat an old SnowRunner, half buried under a tarp and dust. Its engine was ancient, but reliable if it started. Ethan yanked the tarp off and checked the power core. It was cold, almost dead. "Will it run?" she asked, her breath fogging in the air. Ethan smirked faintly. "It'll run," he said. Though it was more hope than certainty, he jammed the energy cell into the slot, turned the key, and the engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. The sound was loud, too loud, but there was no choice now. They climbed onto the SnowRunner, Ethan in front, her behind him, her arms gripping his sides for balance. He revved the engine, sending a spray of snow into the air. The runner shot forward, carving a path through the storm behind them. The hum grew into a mechanical growl through the swirling snow. A dark shape emerged, sleek, armored, moving fast. A hunter craft, low to the ground, skimming over the ice like a predator on the hunt. "They've spotted us," she shouted over the wind. Ethan twisted the handlebars, veering sharply onto a narrow ridge that wound between jagged ice formations. The SnowRunner bounced and slid, but the terrain gave them cover. The hunter craft followed, its lights cutting through the white haze. A sudden burst of blue energy slammed into the snow to their left, exploding in a shower of ice shards. "They're firing stun pulses," she warned. "If they hit us, we're done." Ethan's focus sharpened, his hands steady on the controls. The ridge narrowed, forcing them dangerously close to the edge. One wrong move and they'd drop into a frozen ravine. The hunter craft closed in, its engine screaming. Another stun pulse tore past, close enough to make Ethan's hair stand on end. He swerved hard right, the SnowRunner skidding, barely holding traction. "Hold on," he shouted. He spotted a break in the ridge ahead, a steep slope leading down into a dense ice canyon. Without slowing, he cut the power just enough to drop the nose of the runner and let gravity take over. They slid down the slope, snow spraying around them. The hunter craft overshot the turn, unable to follow immediately. It circled above, scanning for a way down. Ethan kept the runner moving through the twisting canyon, the walls towering above them. The storm muted here, replaced by the eerie echoes of their engine. For a moment, it felt like they had lost their pursuer. But the Allieri's grip on his coat tightened. "They won't give up," she said. "They'll track us by heat, sound, even the faint trace of my biosignature." Ethan slowed only slightly. "Enough to think, there's an old mining tunnel up ahead," he said. "If we can reach it before they find the entrance, we can hide inside." She nodded, though he could feel her tension in the way she held on. They rounded a bend, and there it was, a dark gap in the ice wall, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Ethan gunned the engine, steering straight for it. The tunnel swallowed them, the sudden darkness making it hard to see. Ethan killed the engine, the silence falling heavy. They sat there, listening. At first, there was nothing but the slow drip of melting ice somewhere deep in the cave. Then, faintly, the hum returned, growing louder. The hunter craft had found the canyon. Ethan turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "If they come in here, we can't outrun them." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device, a flat, round disc with glowing lines. "This will blind their sensors for a short time," she said, "but only once." Ethan took a breath, his mind already running through escape routes. The chase wasn't over. It had only just begun. The tunnel was silent except for the slow, steady drip of water echoing from somewhere deep inside. Ethan kept his hand on the rifle, his eyes fixed on the pale light at the tunnel's mouth. The hum of the hunter craft grew closer, the sound bouncing off the ice walls until it felt like it was surrounding them. The alliary knelt beside him, holding the small round device in her palm, its faint glow casting strange shadows on her face. "They'll send in drones first," she said softly. "Small, fast, armed with stunners and trackers." Ethan gave a quick nod. "Then we make sure they don't see us." She shook her head. "If they're this close, they already suspect we're here." Her voice carried no fear, only certainty, as if she had faced this kind of moment before. The hum cut off suddenly, replaced by a sharper sound, metallic clicks, and the high-pitched whir of engines. Ethan peered around the edge of the tunnel and saw them. 3 spherical drones, each the size of a human head, hovering in a perfect line as they approached the entrance. Thin beams of blue light swept across the snow, scanning for life signs. "They're searching for you," Ethan muttered. "Your heat, your breath, anything." Her fingers tightened around the device. "Once I trigger this, their scanners go blind for 60 seconds. She said, "That's our only window to move." Ethan glanced deeper into the tunnel, the darkness stretching endlessly. "Where does this go?" he asked. "Old mining shaft." She replied, "It connects to the canyon network. If we're lucky, and if we're not lucky, then it's a dead end," she said simply. The drones stopped at the tunnel mouth, their scanning beams crossing back and forth like the bars of a cage. Ethan's heartbeat slowed, his focus narrowing. "Now," she whispered. Pressing the device's center, it pulsed brightly, releasing a low hum that made the air feel heavy. The drones froze mid-scan, their lights flickering before going completely. "Dark, go," she hissed. They moved quickly, their boots crunching on the icy floor. The deeper they went, the narrower the tunnel became, the ceiling lowering until Ethan had to duck. The glow from the device dimmed after 30 seconds, halfway, she warned. Ethan quickened his pace, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. But then he stopped. "Wait," he said sharply. Raising a hand, from ahead, faint light spilled into the tunnel, not the white-blue of ice reflections, but the steady orange flicker of fire. The alliary's eyes narrowed. "Someone's here," she whispered. They crept closer until the passage opened into a wider chamber. Inside, 2 figures sat around a small fire, their ragged clothes and sunken faces marking them as drifters or outcasts. But when they looked up, Ethan saw the glint of metal in their eyes, implants. Not scavengers, but informants. "Looks like we've got company," one of the men said. Rising to his feet, the other grinned. "And she's worth a bounty big enough to buy a new ship." Ethan's rifle was in his hands before the first man could reach for his weapon. "Think carefully," Ethan said coldly. But the alliary stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "If you hand me to them, you're dead before you reach their camp," she said. The 2 men hesitated, glancing at each other. "You think they'll protect you?" she continued. "Once they have what they want, they'll silence you too." Something in her tone made the men freeze. Ethan kept the rifle trained on them as they backed toward the far wall. Muttering curses under their breath, the alliary grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a narrow side passage. "They'll be calling the patrol already," she said. "We need to move." They ran deeper into the tunnel network, the air growing colder. The glow from the device was almost gone now, and behind them came the faint sound of drones rebooting. "They'll be right on us," Ethan said. "Then you should know the rest before we're caught," she replied, her voice steady despite the chase. She slowed just enough to look at him. "The crystal I carry," she said. "It's not just proof of what humans did. It's a genetic key." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "A key to what?" "To the program," she answered. "They're trying to create hybrids, part human, part alliary, stronger than both, but loyal only to them." Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "And you're part of it?" he asked. I was the first successful match, she said quietly. I carry both bloodlines, and I'm the only one who survived the trials. Her hand went to the pouch again. This crystal holds my genetic code, and with it, they can. Make more like me, Ethan's breath caught. That's why they're hunting you. He said, not just for what you know, but for what you are. She nodded. If they get me or this crystal, they'll have an army that can't be. Stopped. Her voice hardened. That's why I can't be captured alive. They turned another corner, the tunnel widening again. A faint glow ahead promised an exit, maybe to another canyon. But behind them, the hum was back. Louder now, joined by the mechanical clatter of drones closing in. Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle. Then we make sure they don't get you, he said. Her silver eyes met his, and for a moment, there was no fear there, only trust. The glow ahead grew brighter, flickering like sunlight bouncing off ice. Ethan and the alliary pushed forward, their boots crunching on the frozen floor, each step echoing through the tunnel behind them. The hum of the hunter craft and the hype hitched. Whine of drones was closing fast. The alliary's breath was sharp but steady. Her eyes fixed on the light ahead. We're almost there, she said, though her voice carried no relief. The tunnel opened into a wide ice canyon, the walls towering high on both sides. A thin ribbon of pale sky was visible above. The storm having eased for the first time in days, at the far end of the canyon, Ethan saw it a narrow steel bridge, spanning a deep crevasse. Beyond that bridge lay the faint silhouette of a small outpost, its Cum's tower blinking in the distance. That's the last checkpoint before the neutral zone, she said. If we reach it, I can call my people. Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle, and if we don't? Her silver eyes met his, calm and unblinking. Then you'll have to do what I can't destroy the crystal, she said, her hand pressing the pouch at her waist. He didn't answer, but the weight of the choice pressed heavy in his chest. They started across the canyon floor, their pace quickening. The wind shifted, carrying with it the metallic hum of engines growing louder. Ethan looked back and saw them, the hunter craft swooping into view above the canyon, its black hull gleaming. Drones poured from its belly like a swarm of hornets, their scanners glowing blue. They've got us in the open, Ethan muttered. The alliary reached into her coat, pulling out a small rod that extended into a sleek energy weapon. Then we fight, she said simply. The first drone darted forward, its stunned pulse flashing past Ethan's head and exploding against the ice wall. Ethan dropped to one knee, firing a clean shot that sent the drone spinning into the snow. The alliary moved beside him with fluid precision, her weapon cutting through the air, each shot striking with deadly accuracy. But for every drone they destroyed, two more appeared. The hum of the hunter craft deepened as it lowered toward the canyon floor, its side hatch sliding open. Ethan knew they couldn't hold out long in the open. Move, he shouted, covering her as they sprinted toward the bridge. Blasts of energy lit the snow around them, the heat sharp against the cold air. A pulse hit the ground just ahead, sending a shockwave through Ethan's legs. He stumbled, but the alliary grabbed his arm. Pulling him up without breaking stride, they reached the foot of the bridge. It was narrow, old, and covered in patches of ice. One wrong step, and they'd drop into the endless darkness below. The drones closed in, their hum blending into a single high-pitched note. Ethan turned and fired again, taking down another. But they were too many. The alliary stopped halfway across the bridge. Turning to face the oncoming swarm, her coat whipped in the wind, her silver eyes bright against the pale world. This is where you decide, she said, her voice clear even over the storm and engines. Decide what? Ethan shouted, keeping his rifle aimed. If you're with me, we keep going. We get this crystal to my people. No matter the cost, she said. And if I'm not? Then you take it and destroy it before they capture me. Ethan looked at her, the drones, the hunter craft lowering just meters away. He thought of his quiet cabin, the life he had built far from all this, but that life was already gone. Erased the moment he had opened his door to her. He lowered his rifle slightly, meeting her gaze. "I'm with you," he said. Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Then hardened again, "Then run," she said. They sprinted the last stretch of the bridge, energy bolts slamming into the steel around them. One pulse grazed Ethan's arm, numbing it instantly, but he kept moving. They reached the other side. Just as the first drone touched down on the bridge, the alliary spun, firing at the supports. The metal groaned, then snapped, sending the bridge collapsing into the crevasse. Taking several drones with it, the hunter craft pulled up sharply. Forced to retreat from the sudden drop, the drones on the far side swarmed. But none could cross now. Ethan and the alliary stumbled toward the outpost, the Combs Tower blinking steadily above. By the time they reached the gate, Ethan's legs burned, his breath harsh in the cold air. The alliary stepped forward, pressing her palm to a small panel beside the door. It scanned her hand, then flashed green. "Welcome, alliary envoy," a soft voice said in a language Ethan didn't understand. The heavy doors slid open and warm air spilled out for the first time in days. Ethan felt the cold retreat from his skin. She turned to him, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. "You didn't have to come this far," she said. "I did," he replied simply. Her silver eyes held his for a moment, then she stepped inside. Ethan followed, knowing his life would never return to what it was, and somewhere far above, in the storm clouds over Varelia. The hunter craft turned away, not defeated, but waiting.